My girlfriend once came to me with this strange idea. Let's act like we've broken up for a week, just to see what happens. I remember just shrugging and saying, if that's what you want. By the third day of this little experiment, she had already postmarked a picture of herself snuggled up with another guy. I didn't send her a text, didn't ask for an explanation. I simply changed the locks and left her things outside the door. When she showed up in tears, insisting, it was just a test, I looked her dead in the eye and told her, good, I passed. Have you ever had that gut punch moment when it suddenly hits you that your entire relationship has been standing on quicksand? That's exactly where I landed last month. And I figured I'd share the story, because maybe someone else will recognize the red flags I ignored for far too long. It all kicked off on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I'm 32, been living with my girlfriend, let's call her Claire, she's 29, for about 8 months. We'd been dating close to 2 years, and up until that point I honestly thought things were pretty solid. I was cooking dinner when Claire walked in from her job at a marketing firm. Right away I could tell something was off. She was unusually quiet, almost distract mark, like she was carrying a thought she didn't want to say. Finally, she sat down at the counter, looked at me, and dropped her little bomb. I think we should pretend we broke up for a week. I froze mid-chop, knife still in my hand. Wait, what? She rushed to explain. Not for real. Just, a little experiment. To see how we feel when we're apart, to make sure this is still what we both want. Immediately, my first thought was that she'd probably met someone else and won Mark to test drive a new option before deciding. I kept that suspicion to myself, though, and instead asked, where is this even coming from? She launched into the story about how her friend Sophie had tried the same thing with her boyfriend, and supposedly it brought them closer than ever, reminded them why they fell in love like hitting some magical reset button. I've never been a fan of games like that, but Claire insists Mark it wasn't a game at all. She called it a growth exercise. Since she'd been seeing a therapist recently, part of me wondered if this came from one of those sessions. Still, it sounded like complete nonsense. After 20 minutes of going back and forth, I realized she wasn't really asking me. She was just letting me know this was happening. So I just nodded and said, if that's what you want. Funny enough, she actually looked a little let down by how easily I agreed. Maybe she was expecting me to beg her not to go through with it. That's never been my style. We set the rules for our trial breakup. 1 week of no calls, no texts, unless it was something important about the apartment. She'd stay at Sophie's place. After 7 days, we'd check in and see how we felt. That same night, she packed a bag and left. The apartment felt different without her. Not in a bad way, though. It was quieter, tidier. I actually slept better than I had in months. Day 1 passed without much fuss. I went to work. I'm an architectural engineer. Then hit the gym, grabbed a drink with a coworker. Claire didn't reach out, which was part of the deal. I noticed I didn't really miss her, and that realization stuck with me. Day 2 was pretty much the same. I caught up on some long overdue projects, called my brother, and watched a movie Claire would have hallmark. Again, no word from her, and honestly, I was fine with that. But day 3, that's when everything flipped. I don't use Instagram much, but I do have an account. I was scrolling during lunch when I saw it, her post. There she was, curled up on a couch with some guy I didn't recognize. His arm draped around her, her head resting on his shoulder. The caption read, sometimes life surprises you with exactly what you need. I just sat there, staring at that picture. This wasn't Sophie's place. I didn't recognize the apartment at all. And the timestamp? That photo had gone up just that morning. So much for her relationship reset button. More like she'd found her replacement already. I calmly finished my lunch, rinsed my plate, and made 3 phone calls. First, I called my landlord, Mark, explained the situation, asked what my options were. Because both our names were on the lease, he said I couldn't legally lock her out. But if she had truly moved out for good, we could talk about modifying the lease later. For now, I'd have to tread carefully. Second, I rang up my buddy Daniel, who happens to be a lawyer. He didn't sugarcoat it. You can't change the locks or kick her stuff out. That's an illegal eviction, even if she chia Mark. But you also don't have to live with her anymore. Document everything, this could get messy. Third, I reached out to my friend Luke, asked if I could crash at his place for a while. Without hesitation, he said yes. That evening, I packed up my essentials, then went to the storage closet and pulled out Claire's suitcases. I carefully filled them with enough of her clothes and daily items to last her a couple of weeks. left them by the door, and sent her the only text I would send all week. Saw your Instagram. Pack some of your things by the door. I'll be staying elsewhere for now. Please pick up your stuff. We're done. I marked her number, grabbed my bags, and headed to Luke's. Didn't hear a peep from her that night. The next morning, Luke and I got breakfast before work, and he helped me browse short-term rental options. I wasn't about to keep living under the same roof with someone who could pull a stunt like that, but I also wasn't going to do anything reckless or illegal. By noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Claire. WTF? We're on a break, not broken up. Where are you? I didn't bother responding. Let her sit in the mess she made. Later that evening, Luke came with me back to the apartment. Claire wasn't around, but the suitcases I'd left were gone. I grabbed a few more of my belongings and left again. The following day, I spoke with Mark, the landlord, one more time. He explained that the cleanest way forward would be for one of us to officially come off the lease, and the remaining tenant would need to qualify on their own income. With my stable job and spotless record, he had no problem with me taking over solo. That evening, Claire finally called. I picked up. It was time to end the games. You're the one who said we were broken up for a week, I told her calmly. She shot back. I said pretend. It wasn't real, it was a test. A test that you failed the second you mark yourself cuddling with some guy after 3 days. That wasn't what it looked like. Ethan's just a friend from work, she stammered. I don't care if he's the Pope, I replied. We're finished. She broke down in tears. It was just a test to see if you cared enough to fight for us. And that's when everything made sense. The truth behind the whole charade wasn't about resetting our relationship. It was just manipulation. She marked me to jump through hoops, to prove my devotion. Suddenly, all the pieces fit. The weird games she'd been playing for months, the sudden arguments that came out of nowhere, the constant need for reassurance. Well, here's the good news. She said it was a test and I passed. Because I value myself too much to stay with someone who thinks love is a game. You can't just dump me over this, Claire said, her voice sharp as she tried shifting tactics. We still have a lease together. You can't make me leave. Kept my cool. You're right about the lease. I already spoke with Mark. Here's the deal. One of us can officially take over the lease if the other agrees and the landlord signs off on the finances, or we both move out. That's the only choice we've got. But either way, Claire, we're finished. She looked stunned, like she couldn't believe I'd already thought through every angle. So, that's it? After 2 years together, you're just going to throw it all away over one mistake? This wasn't a mistake, I told her flatly. It was a calculamark decision to manipulate me. And when that didn't pan out, you went out of your way to hurt me. So yeah, I'm done. In the end, we agreed that I would take over the lease. Claire would move out officially, and I'd stay on as the sole tenant. Mark the paperwork the next day, and within a week the apartment was legally mine. Cost me an extra deposit and some fees, but honestly, having that clean break was worth every single dollar. Over the next few days, Claire showed up with her friend Sophie to grab the rest of her belongings. I made sure to be gone whenever they came by, but before and after each visit, I mark everything with photos, just in case she tried to claim anything was missing or damaged. The texts kept rolling in. 1 minute she'd be angry, cursing me out, the next she'd be pleading with me to reconsider. I answered only when it was about logistics, her mail, the lease, apartment details. After about a week, she seemed to finally accept that I wasn't changing my mind. Then came her social media campaign. Suddenly my feed was full of vague posts about betrayal and men who couldn't handle strong women. Some of our mutual friends called, wanting to know what happened. I told the story plainly, without exaggerating. Most understood. A couple sided with her, and I quietly let those people go, too. 2 weeks after that so-called test, I ran into Ethan, the guy from the Instagram photo, at a coffee shop. He spot-marked me, looked uncomfortable, then walked over to my table. Look, man, he said. I just want you to know I didn't realize she had a boyfriend. She told me she was single. And I actually believed him. Turns out Claire had been laying groundwork with him weeks before her break idea. He even showed me texts that went back nearly a month. Innocent enough on the surface, but definitely flirty. He seemed like a decent guy who got caught in her web. I thanked him for being upfront and wished him luck. It's been about a month since everything blew up. I'm still in the apartment, though I'll probably move when the lease ends in 2 months. Too many memories tied up in those walls. I'm not rushing into dating either. I need time to reset and fine-tune my radar after ignoring so many warning signs with Claire. From what I hear, she's not with Ethan anymore either. Apparently, once he found out the full story, he won Mark nothing to do with her. Still, she's out there telling anyone who will listen that I'm the villain who walked away from a great relationship over one small mistake. But here's the truth I know. If someone tests your love by deliberately manipulating you, they're not looking for a partner. They want a puppet, a prop in their little drama. And life is way too short to waste on that nonsense. So, if your partner ever suggests a pretend breakup as some kind of test, do yourself a favor. Treat it as the real thing and walk away right then and there. Some tests are only passed by refusing to play. Update 3 months later. I hadn't planned on giving an update, but a few developments since then are worth sharing. First, the apartment situation ended up working out better than I expect Mark. After I finalized the lease in my own name, Mark offered me the option to move into a newly renovated Mark 1 bedroom in the same building. Rent was cheaper, and I got a clean slate without the hassle of finding a brand new place. I moved in last month with a fresh lease in hand. As for Claire's smear campaign, that fizzled out after about 6 weeks. Apparently, she tried the same break test routine with Ethan once they star-marked seeing each other. He recognized the manipulation instantly, having just been through it himself, and broke things off immediately. When he told our mutual friends about it, any sympathy people had for her pretty much vanished. The biggest surprise, though, came from Claire's ex before me, Jason. Through a mutual friend, he reached out and asked to grab a beer. Over drinks, he told me she had pulled similar stunts throughout their 3-year relationship. His breaking point came when she lied about flying to visit her sister, but instead booked a hotel across town just to see if he'd cheat while she was away. When he didn't, she was actually disappointed Mark. She creates problems to feel important, Jason explained. When things are stable, she gets bored and manufactures drama. That conversation was weirdly validating. It confirmed what I had already star-marked to realize, that the problem wasn't me failing some kind of relationship test. It was her constant craving for chaos. As for me, I've dipped a toe back into dating, casual, nothing serious. I feel like I've developed sharper instincts now, better at spotting red flags I used to ignore. That's the silver lining in all this. And about the lease, once the paperwork was complete and I became the sole tenant, transferring into the new unit was straightforward. Claire tried to argue that she deserved half of my security deposit back. But since she was the one who chose to break the lease early, those funds went toward fees. The landlord handled everything by the book, and that was that. The last I heard, Claire is focusing on herself. Based on her social media, that translates to posting motivational quotes about knowing your worth and how the right person won't make you question their love. The irony there almost makes me laugh. A few people have asked if I regret ending things so abruptly instead of trying to work through it. Not for 1 second. What she did wasn't a moment of poor judgment. It was a calculamark attempt to see how much manipulation I tolerate. Learning that the answer is none seems to have been a lesson for both of us. As far as I'm concerned, case closed. Sometimes the trash really does take itself out. It just needs a little help making it to the curb.